progressing. So all is well in that regard. So just wanted to put that out there because I think as a content designer, I like to be very much in touch with my humanity. And humanity is a very essential part of what we do day to day. And so before I kind of dive deep into my day to day, I do want to kind of, again, do some more scene setting, talk a little bit about Red Ventures, kind of explain what the heck Red Ventures is and what it does, because it, like, from the outside, it might be like, how do they get away with owning all these companies? This looks shady. So I want to kind of explain that. Then when I explain content design, the team I work on, yada, yada, all that fun stuff. And then we can get into the meat and potatoes of the talk. I was going to say presentation, but I don't actually have one. So anyway, so Red Ventures. Red Ventures has been around since about the year 2000. And it started off as essentially this, I guess you could say, over the phone direct TV company where basically employees were selling direct TV. And so that was the beginning. The founders had this idea that they would initially try to drive people to physical stores through online leads, and it failed miserably. So they pivoted and they came up with something different. And so what ended up happening is that Red Ventures grew into this huge digital marketing / digital publishing powerhouse. And so the company has gone on a acquisition spree that I've not really seen before, acquiring companies like Bankrate, CNET, Healthline, Lonely Planet, The Points Guy. If you're familiar with any of those brands, those are all Red Ventures brands. And so the company owns them all, either through acquisition or through maybe starting them in-house. And what that means for the people who work there is that a lot of us are split across several different brands and teams. So for instance, you may meet Red Ventures employees who work on the Healthline team. So they're completely responsible for Healthline. That is their job. They are embedded in that company within a company, so to speak. And so their team culture may look completely different than people who are working for Bankrate. And so they have a team of designers and content designers and marketing folk. And so it's like a huge hub with all these different, it's kind of like a huge office building with all these different companies just kind of taking up residence in there. But the owners of the office building actually own all the companies in there as well. So there's a lot going on. So anyway, I work on a team that's called MTech. MTech is a brand you've probably never heard of, and you probably never heard of it because it is fairly new. So Magenta Technologies is a result of a joint venture between Red Ventures and Train Technologies. Train Technologies is a huge HVAC manufacturer. And so our goal essentially is to revolutionize the way people shop for HVAC systems. Doesn't sound that sexy or scintillating or exciting all the time, but one of the most exciting things and most energizing things about the job, especially for me, is that our huge focus right now is what I like to call a demolition project, because we are literally knocking down existing web experiences and rebuilding them from the ground up with a better user experience in mind. Currently, the web products that we're looking at, honestly, we need a lot of help, a lot of TLC. And so we are overhauling the entire experience, doing an ambitious, sometimes I call it audacious, because it really does feel audacious, redesign project. And so that is
students in this video will tackle.
Oh, okay. It is both equal parts exciting and terrifying, because it's a whole lot of work and it's high stakes. It is probably the biggest project I've ever worked on in my career. And so, yeah, it's fun, but again, terrifying some days. So, all right, so that kind of sets the scene a little bit. Talk a little bit about my career, my background, and how I ended up in content design and what that means for me. My background is in journalism. So I got a degree in mass communication with an emphasis in print journalism specifically. After college, I got a job as a reporter. I worked at a small daily newspaper in Rock Hill, South Carolina called the Rock Hill Herald. And for about 3 years, I covered crime, public safety, the courts, breaking news for that paper. Eventually transitioned over to the Charlotte Observer, where I started covering small business and entrepreneurship, which was a complete departure from the murder and mayhem beat, as I like to call it. And so, whereas as a crime reporter, my days were unpredictable and frenetic and chaotic and long because I worked about 14-hour days on the regular. As a business reporter, they were slow and like I wasn't as motivated as I used to be. It wasn't as action packed. Eventually, I was moved to the county government desk, which I really liked because I like politics. And so the opportunity to cover local politics in Charlotte or Mecklenburg County. So I was not just the city of Charlotte, but the largest county in North Carolina was pretty huge for me, especially as a young reporter. I was maybe 24, 25 at the time. And so like, this was big. This was like, wow, okay, this is my chance. This is, I'm going to do this. This is going to be great. I'm going to continue to be that accountable, like that reporter who is just kind of kicking down the institutions of power and taking names and holding government officials accountable. I was able to do that as a crime reporter. And once you start doing work like that, it gets kind of addictive. And so I looked to do the same thing in Charlotte, but it started to look a lot different for me by the time I made it to the county government desk in Charlotte, just because I was working for a bigger paper. It was probably one of the most prominent papers in the McClatchy newspapers chain. And so it was very corporate. And over time, they began to do things that I call Hunger Games-esque that seemed to pit reporters against each other. We were competing against each other for clicks. We were trying to get people on our stories. They were tracking our bylines to see how many clicks you were actually getting on your story. They tracked our Twitter accounts. I had to keep my followers at a certain number. And I was like, I really didn't get into it to do this. And I began to feel like a lot of the things I was writing was more sensational and soul-sucking than actually that, that government accountability reporting that I had been doing before. So in 2016, I looked for an exit strategy. I wanted to see what else could I do with my writing and reporting chops. And that's when I landed a marketing job as a copywriter, which is, that's a traditional path for former journalists who leave the news business. They find a job in marketing or advertising or PR. I did not want to do public relations. Having been in the media, I knew how media people felt about PR people. And I was like, I'm good. I wanted to do something like corporate communications, or marketing or something like that. Got a job at a mortgage lender of all places. But it was an interesting company. It was unconventional in that it had a mission statement saying that the company existed to love and value people. And I was like, that's different. And that aligns with who I am as a person, which kind of harkens back to what I was saying about humanity and how that's such an important part of my work. And so that really intrigued me. They piqued my interest because I'm like, a company saying that they love and value people. I need to investigate this a little bit more, especially a mortgage company in Charlotte, because Charlotte's the second largest financial center in the US. And our mortgage companies aren't exactly what you might think of being personable. It's big business. So I landed the job at this mortgage lender. It's called Movement Mortgage, have offices all around the country. And so I worked in the marketing department and learned a lot about corporate comms. I did advertising, copywriting, all that great stuff, email campaigns, all that great stuff. But by 2 years, was kind of looking for something else. And I found a job listing at this company called Lending Tree for a content strategist. And I had no idea what that meant. I'm like, content strategist. Okay. Sounds nice. Sounds kind of fancy. A little fancier than copywriter. So I'm going to check it out and see what happens. And read the job description, and it seemed to blend a little bit of the marketing stuff that I was accustomed to and felt really comfortable with, but also higher level strategy, like the opportunity to really brainstorm and to work in tandem with UX designers and to work in tandem with product managers. And I'm like, I don't know much about this just yet, but I'm interested. And so apparently I talked a good game because I got the job. And it was probably the best introduction to UX I think I could have had. I was embedded into product work and did not realize it at the time. I didn't understand. I was writing microcopy, didn't know it was called microcopy. I was helping design flows, did not realize I was helping design flows, did not know this was an actual thing outside of me being a writer. So I just call myself a writer. I mean, yeah, I had the title of content strategist, but nobody internally knew what that meant either. So it was kind of like, yeah, I'm the guy. I write. I'm the words man. So that's what they refer to me as. That hey, he's our words guy. Let's get him on it. And so as time went on, I began to realize and learn that content strategy is its own discipline, and it's actually different. It's a lot. There's a lot more involved than what I'm doing, and I can really scale my role here. And so my manager, who's probably the best manager I've had in my career, he and I just kept talking about it. And I started to go to things like Confab, and I would watch videos from like the UX wizards and kind of just find people on LinkedIn to get connected to. And I would jump in people's DMs because I'll do that unashamedly. I have no problem hitting you up on LinkedIn at all. And so I just started to learn more and more and bring those things I was learning to my everyday role. And so that's when I felt comfortable actually calling myself like, oh yeah, I'm a content strategist. Like I was like, yeah, I'm doing UX things. That makes sense. I'm working with UX designers all the time. But the way I was working with these UX designers probably wasn't ideal. more than probably, it wasn't ideal because for the most part, writing still wasn't as valued in the ecosystem of product as it probably should have been. And so I spent months evangelizing content design because this was around the time we started to see this renaissance happening in the industry. I guess if we want to say it, it's its own industry now. And we started to see people come to this revelation that, you know what, we should get our writers brought into the process a little earlier. And we should actually utilize their design thinking skills and their strategic minds to actually help us figure out how to design this flow because they're really good at this. And I basically spent, like I said, I spent months evangelizing and proselytizing and having meetings and sending resources and reading and talking and meeting and having one-on-ones with people to essentially advocate for my role and to help them understand the value of content design and having someone like me part of the process from jump, not just, oh, hey, I've already designed this flow. Can you put some words in this box? But hey, we need to actually design this flow. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. And let's do it together collaboratively and see what we can come up with. And let's use some design tools and some UX components. And, I'm thinking like maybe this could be an accordion, or maybe this could be a collapsible, or maybe this could be a slider, and having those conversations and feeling like I'm actually part of creating the solution. And so I began to do that more at LendingTree, and it was going really well, but I kind of felt like I sort of capped where I was. And so that's when I made the transition over to Red Ventures, which brings me to where I am today. I told you I will fill 30 minutes. So, but I like to tell stories and I like to go in chronological order sometimes. So yes, now I'm at Red Ventures. I am only into month 6 here. But I decided to make this leap to Red Ventures because it seemed to be a company that really embraced the value of content design. They, like Facebook, like Shopify, Uber, and Firefox, several other companies, shifted titles. So they pivoted from content strategy to content design, UX writers to content design. And in my interviews with people at the company, there was this widespread appreciation for what a writer brings to the table when designing an experience. And I was like, yes, music to my ears. And this particular project that I'm on kind of takes my career in a different direction. So I haven't been able to share this with Larry yet, but I'm now a people manager. So I have 3 direct reports and I'm leading a team. I am leading a content design team, and we are building a content design team from the ground up, a practice from the ground up. So because Red Ventures, all the companies are siloed in a way, MTech, we are building MTech's content design practice, not Red Ventures, because it's all over the place. Everybody has a content design practice or team, but MTech did not before me. And so now I have a small little mini team, small yet mighty, that includes, so there are 4 of us total, but 2 of them are content designers who are going to help with this ambitious redesign, which is primarily focused on UX content. And I have a 3rd writer who is actually doing a lot of SEO lift. So she is helping out with some long form pieces that we still need to actually incorporate and integrate into the site experience. And so I find myself having to educate a lot of our business leaders on the difference between SEO and UX, between content design and SEO writer. And so, yeah, there's still a lot of education happening, still a lot of teaching opportunities, and still a lot of come to Jesus moments like, hey, no, this is what we actually do. So what does my day-to-day look like? Well, now it looks very different than what it probably looked like a few months ago. Because I now manage a team, I spend a lot of time working on strategy. So I'm responsible for developing and delivering the UX content strategy for these ambitious web redesigns. And there are 4, by the way. So we're redesigning 4 entire websites from the ground up, knocking them down, applying dynamite, whatever you want to say, blowing them up, and then building them back up. And so I'm responsible for the UX content strategy. I'm responsible for our team and leading them as we try to execute on this, again, audacious project. And so that means, yeah, I spend a lot of time working on strategy, but I also spend a lot of time in meetings. Meeting limbo is a thing. And I probably spend a ridiculous amount of time during the day talking to people. However, I don't hate it because conversations and relationships are so essential to what we do. I have been able to make so much more progress by just jumping on a Zoom call with somebody and having a little like, hey, let's have a little confab really quickly and let's kind of work this out, than just sending a Slack message or sending an email. Talking to people face to face as we can be right now is so much more effective. And so I have found that I actually enjoy the management aspect of it. Do I miss writing as often as I did? Yes, I am trying to fit writing in between all of that. It is quite the balancing act. But I really do enjoy being able to talk to people to kind of create a vision and to see that vision come to life. And so it is an amazing opportunity to be able to lead these content designers and to watch them grow and develop and to have conversations about where do you want to end up? Like, do you want to continue to follow this content design track, or do you want to switch to an editorial track, which is an option at Red Ventures? So you can, by all means, you can do more editorial work where you are essentially considered a reporter or a brand journalist of sorts. And if that's something you want to do, be involved with storytelling, long form storytelling, you are empowered to pursue that direction. And if you want to do content design, you want to be a UX writer, you want to be involved in conversations with product designers, you want to be part of those meetings, you want to wireframe solutions in Figma, which please learn Figma, then we can work on that as well. And so being able to have those conversations with my direct reports and watch them, again, make those choices for themselves and pursue their passions is really invigorating in a way that I did not expect. Makes me very proud. And my team, I'm very proud of them. We haven't been together too long, obviously, but we're growing and we're committed and we're hardworking and we are everywhere. And when I say everywhere, we interface with pretty much everyone on this MTech business. So in these meetings that I have, I'm having meetings with people like the senior vice president of this company within a company, having meetings with my manager, who is our UX lead. So she is responsible for executing the entire project that we're working on right now and kind of corralling all of us together. My team includes, so my particular team, yes, includes content designers, but I have peers who are product designers. And so we are working together. We are meeting almost daily. We are wireframing together. We are talking about flows. We are talking about things we need to absolutely change on the existing experience. We are talking about things we need to throw in the trash. I'm also interfacing with external partners a lot. So because this is a joint venture, Train Technologies is still very much involved. And so while they're involved from a more strategic standpoint, we are accountable to them. I've had to have meetings with them. It's like working a little bit like in an agency environment where they're a client. And so we have touch points with them. So we give them progress updates. We give them strategy updates. We invite them to working sessions. And so there have been several times where I've had meetings with these partners as we try and figure out, one, better workflows, because that is a very unique challenge when you are, one, a new team within yourself, like you're kind of just building something by yourself, and you're trying to get all of that figured out. But then also you're working with a company that is, one, external, but two, has a culture that's completely different than yours, a different type of working style that is completely different than yours, a different type of company culture that is completely different than yours. And so figuring out how to kind of, bridge those gaps and smooth over any friction, because there is friction, and build relationships and invest and devote a lot of energy into relationship building has been a really unique challenge. And it's exciting. It can be overwhelming. Like I said, I spend an enormous amount of my day in meetings, but when I'm not in meetings and when I'm not talking to people, I am either editing work that our SEO writer has produced. So I touch a little bit of that SEO content, edit her work. We do feedback sessions, we do peer reviews, or I am working with our UXR, our UX researcher. So he is one, I consider him my team's best friend because we absolutely need him. We are doing a lot of content specific testing. We are testing current experiences against proposed experiences, against overhauled experiences. We are going back and auditing things that we even did in my first few months on the job, going to see how effective those things actually are. Are they resonating with our users? Is the language inclusive enough? Are we explaining things well? Are we creating more harm with our words? Those are the things that we're thinking about. Those are the things that are important to us. When I talk about infusing humanity into my work, I'm talking about ensuring that everything that we do is inclusive. We are trying to create a pleasant and elegant and simple experience for our users, but it has to be something that is representative of our users. It can't just be something that speaks to one segment of the population. Here's an example. We are currently deploying a homepage hero test. I wrote the content, my manager designed it. We worked together on it. It was great. It's so much better than what the homepage was before. One of the things that we found though, is that Train, our partners, they are very much attached to product imagery. So they want products in the hero. We're like, no, we want lifestyle in the hero. We want people to see people. We want to focus on the benefit of this system, the benefit of this product, not so much on the actual product in and of itself. And so we're doing a test to see which actually wins. We feel strongly that lifestyle imagery will win, but the numbers will prove that. We could be wrong. But in having those conversations, one of the things we discuss is that HVAC, especially this particular HVAC brand, skews very masculine. So the website before was very red, very bold. Language was about durability, about strength, about testing, about stress, about being the best. And so that kind of language, while it's something you may want in your HVAC system, obviously you don't want to buy a $5,000 air conditioner that breaks down tomorrow. We also have to be careful that we're not just speaking to old men who might really be interested in the technicalities of an HVAC system. I have this gut feeling actually that our brand probably may appeal more to women who statistically make more of the home buying decisions in their families anyway. I don't have anything really to back that up except my experience in mortgages, where women were the more predominant force in making purchasing decisions about the home. And so I just wonder if maybe if we were a little more gender neutral, we might be able to appeal to a vast array of different people who and different gender identities. I think, we are dealing with an external partner, again, that has a very different culture, that may be a little more conservative than we are. RV is very progressive. Our CEO actually in April said that if you expect us to do business the way we did it before George Floyd, this may not be the best place for you. He told employees that during an all-employee meeting, and I really respected that. As a Black man, I really respected that. One, because I had started a diversity and inclusion group at Lending Tree, and we faced a lot of headwinds. It was a great experience. It was an energizing, exhilarating experience. I don't regret it, but we faced a lot of headwinds because it's hard to sometimes crack and penetrate leadership. It's hard to get them to kind of see beyond the dollars and cents and to want to make these very powerful and bold stands. Our CEO makes them. He recently railed against Texas's abortion law. And I'm not trying to get political. I don't consider it political. I consider it human personally. And I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I am just giving you an example, some flavor about the kind of company Red Ventures is. Train, maybe not so much. And so we're having to figure out how are we going to deal with those kind of things? How do we have these kind of conversations? Because it does affect our work. It gets so microscopic to the point that we're deploying a test for product imagery. So that's something that we always have to think about. So yeah, I have those conversations with people, have those conversations with interface with my manager about inclusive language and inclusive design. Our team meets once a week. So we are, even though we're a bunch of UX designers, content and product, we are still called a creative team, which is fine, doesn't offend us. So our creative team, we get together once a week, every Wednesday, and we share work and we give each other feedback, or we just check in with each other. We recently had a really great happy hour that was really fun and necessary, again, because the work we're doing is very demanding. I spend a lot of time checking in with my direct reports, making sure they're okay. We have one-on-ones once a week. And yeah, I find myself talking in a lot of meetings. And so leading this team has given me a lot of visibility in this company. And I don't say that from an egotistical standpoint. I say that from a factual one. I'm accountable for a lot and I'm responsible for a lot and I have to give answers. and that can be a little terrifying too. Yesterday in a meeting, there was a big project update I had to deliver that I did not expect to deliver. And, you kind of just have to fly by the seat of your pants sometimes. And so, yeah, that's what I did. And so yeah, that's kind of a little bit of the day in a life. Sometimes making a sandwich is hard. And that's very important to me. So food is a passion of mine. It's a hobby of mine. And I'm not always nice when I don't eat. I get really hangry. So I try to make it a point to eat during the day and I advocate for eating. So if any of you are ever tempted to skip lunch because of work, stop. Please stop that. You have to eat. But I find myself struggling to eat during the day sometimes because I'm in back-to-back meetings, or I have to give some kind of update, or I have to write something really quickly, or I have to handle some kind of fire or put out some kind of fire that's erupted. And so that becomes very difficult sometimes, just walking away from this area just to make a sandwich. But find time to make your sandwiches. Find time to heat up your lunch. You have to eat. It's so important because your brain needs the food. It needs the energy. By the end of the day, sometimes I feel so spent because I've just, contrary to what a lot of people believe, I am an introvert. I am a natural introvert. I do not get my energy from being around people or talking all the time. I do it because I actually do like to talk. It's weird. But by the end of the day, I'm just kind of exhausted because I feel like I've poured so much out. But, taking time to eat, which probably seems like such a, well, duh, Jonathan. I mean, yeah, we eat lunchtime. It is incredibly important. It is something that I stress to my coworkers and to my team. You have to take that time to just disconnect. That is huge because you can get so engrossed in what you're doing. You can get so tied up in exciting insights about the research, or you can get so engrossed in kind of, iterating on some button text, or you can get so engrossed in bouncing ideas off of a peer about a headline or about a flow or about a shopping cart or whatever, that you forget to take care of yourself. And you have to take care of yourself. Words people, we are notoriously bad at taking care of ourselves. We put ourselves last because it's always about the user. And then it's always about the stakeholder. And then it's always about meeting this demand, or it's always about making this goal. We can't do all these things well if we constantly put ourselves on the back burner. And so I'm preaching to myself, right? I need to actually take the medicine that I'm trying to spew right now. But you have to take care of yourself, and you have to value yourself and your time. And that's one of the things that I've learned in taking on more of a management role. I have to be fiercely protective of my calendar. And so something I do to kind of give myself some breathing room and some thinking room, and I think best in the mornings. And so I know that about myself. So I have scheduled focused time. I have 2 hours every morning from 8 to 10 where I am heads down, no meetings, no conversations. Please do not bother me if you can help it, because I need to think. I need to strategize. Coming up with a UX content strategy for 4 websites, for redesigning 4 websites, takes a lot. Lots of research, lots of talking to other people, lots of data gathering and knowledge sharing, lots of writing, lots of documentation. So there's that I have to think about. Then there are some other projects that I have to tie, I have to put a bow on. So I do have to do some writing. I do have to interface again with a design partner who I was working with maybe just a month ago on something that I thought was over and done with. And like, oh, wait, one more thing. And so I have to get back into full on writer mode. So I need that time in my day. I need that scheduled routine time where I can just focus on doing those things so that I can spend the rest of the day devoting my energy to other people. And so that's kind of where I am in my career right now. Just being, again, fiercely protective of my time and not feeling bad for it, not feeling bad about it. Do people always respect that block? No. Do some meetings have to happen during that block? Yes. Some things are unavoidable. Sometimes you have to talk to a partner. It's urgent. Sometimes your direct report needs something because there's an HR issue happening. I had 3 HR issues with my direct reports last week, of no fault of their own, all HR. Oof, that was rough. But so, you have to have those kind of conversations. You have to be able to put out those fires. And so sometimes, that does get in the middle of my no meeting block. And sometimes I honestly just use that 8 to 10 time to go grab something from Starbucks. So I head out the door and come right back just so I can energize myself. But it doesn't matter. The important part is that I have put that on my calendar. It is visible to everybody else. And it is a clear indication and a visual cue that, hey, I need this time so that I can be a better partner to you, a better employee, a better manager, et cetera, from the hours of 11 to 5:30, 6 o'clock. So that's a synopsis of kind of how my day runs. Again, it's a lot of meetings about a variety of topics, interfacing with our UXR. I think those are my favorite meetings because we're talking about our users, we're testing things, we're kind of just, riffing off each other. So that's fun. And then, just making sure things are running smoothly with my team, checking in on them, checking in on our partners, trying to figure out those kind of things, figure out better work processes. And then also, I can't forget this. One of the things that I really value about Red Ventures is its content design community. So while we all work on different teams and on different brands, we have our Slack channel. And so there are 40 plus content designers working at RV now. We just keep growing and it's wonderful. But we check in with each other. We share work. We share error messages gone wrong. We have meetups. We just kind of, we're there to support each other. We have a support network. I have one-on-ones with other content designers occasionally, just kind of sprinkled throughout the month. So I really look forward to those times and enjoy them because that's when we can vent and commiserate together. We have a content design managers channel that I'm a part of, and that's really helpful because when all those HR issues were unfolding last week, I kind of checked in and was like, hey, y'all, did this happen to your direct report? Because I think HR is tripping right now. And so that helps, just so I can have a gut check before I say things I regret. Because I'm fiercely protective of my team. And my personality is such that when I am protective of people I care about, I may be a little combative is a strong word, but I'm just kind of like in there. Like I can be loud and gregarious. Introvert though I am, I can kind of be a little forceful. And so, I have to watch that and I have to check that. And so those meetings are wonderful. They don't happen as often as they should. But I really value them. And that community of content designers, we've collaborated on projects. I was able to help formalize some diversity, equity, and inclusion standards for all of the content designers at the company. There were about 3 or 4 of us working on it together. That was amazing. Loved doing that. Was able to, parlay my love for DEI into actually formalizing the discipline at Red Ventures. So that was wonderful. And yeah, I've facilitated some conversations about DEI specific topics, I guess you could say, at work. When Dante Wright was killed by police, I was able to facilitate a conversation about that. And I was able to facilitate a conversation for people who just want to talk if they were watching the hearings about the US Capitol insurrection. So, I like reaching out. I like talking to people. I like connecting people. And so as long as I'm doing that and throwing in some words as much as I can, I'm happy and content. So, okay. There are questions in the chat. I've been going a mile a minute. I've been all over the place, and I've been using the word "so" way too often. It's a horrible transition, and I apologize. But let me check on these questions and see what's up.
Well, Jonathan, I can help you out here.
Oh, sure.
I've been paying attention a little bit, and we can categorize them. Do you or anybody else need a 3-minute bio break?
I'm okay. But I don't, if somebody else needs to take it.
If you're okay, then the rest of us can just go to sneak off as we need to. How's that?
Okay, perfect.
So there's a bunch of questions here that, guess what, are about career entry.
Hey.
So okay. Let's see if we can group those together. Maybe we could start with Mindy Moreland. If you just want to go off mute and ask your question, that'd be great.
Hi, can you see me?
I have to flip a little. I have to click a little bit. There you are. I see you, Mindy. Hey, Mindy.
I was not planning. Hi, I was not planning to be on camera here on the couch. Hi, Jonathan. I'm also a former journalist and introvert, and loved what you had to say. So I'm currently a technical writer who does some UX writing in my role, and I'm trying to really advocate strongly for content design at my current company, but it's not a discipline that exists there yet. So I'm hoping to move into a more full-time content design role, and I'm just wondering, as a people manager, what skills or experience do you look for in new content designers who maybe haven't had that exact title on their resume?
And that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because none of my direct reports had that on their resume. So when we were during the hiring process, one of the key things I was looking for, of course, you have like the tactical writing skill and the writing chops. Of course, that's always going to be crucial. But I was really interested in how they thought about users. And so when we were having conversations and we were going through, so we had everybody do a quick little writing project. And so as we were kind of walking through the feedback, I was really trying to prod and understand where their head was about how they were writing and why they made the decisions they made. So, I talked a little bit about self-advocacy earlier, but I think advocacy is an essential skill that probably doesn't get talked about enough, honestly. I think you have to be able to rationalize and defend your choices as a content designer. And even if you don't have a lot of research at your disposal, because if you're interviewing for a job, you're not going to, if you can articulate the decisions you made and how they benefit the user, that, at least for me, is going to make an impression, because that is, user obsessed, customer obsessed, as trite and cliche as that may sound, it's true. Like that's our North Star. That's what guides everything we do. When I was going through the writing project and I was giving my future direct reports feedback, I paid attention to how they received the feedback. So yes, I want you to defend your work, but I don't want you to be defensive. Does that make sense? So
it totally does.
Yeah. So, be receptive to the critique. I'm not harsh. I'll do it with a smile. I know how difficult it is as a writer to watch someone look at your darlings and like, I get it. It's painful. But what I detected I'll give you their names. Her name is Stephanie. The other, her name is Katya. What I found in both of them was a willingness to sacrifice what they cared so much about because the user needs matter more. And so that is what I'm looking for. It doesn't hurt to have some wireframing experience thrown in there. It doesn't need to be extensive, but I will say one of the things about Katya that really impressed me was that her portfolio was basically all in Figma. So she had worked on, as a freelance UX content designer, she had done a lot of work on an app. And so literally she was showing me just screen after screen. And it was a little much, honestly. I was like, whoa, this is overwhelming. But I respect the fact that, one, you know how to do this. And two, you have a portfolio in Figma, which is an essential design tool that content designers, I think, should at least be familiar with. I'm not saying you need to be a maestro, but it doesn't hurt, because that's what my team uses. That's what we use when we're writing and when we're wireframing. And so I definitely that really caught my attention. I really appreciated that. Stephanie's writing skills were really just top notch. I mean, she was high caliber, one of the best I had seen of all the people who came through the door, metaphorical door. And, but also her eagerness to start in UX and her eagerness to advocate for the user and to care about the user and to think only about the user and to be like, you know what, now that I rethink this, now that I think about this again, you're right. The user probably is going to feel this and at this particular part of the experience, or, you know, this button copy on this landing page probably isn't as inclusive as it could be. So let's workshop it together right now in the moment. And I love that. She was willing to workshop with me right there in real time. And it was like, yep, I like you. Let's do this. I think you're going to do very well here. And so, yeah, I know it's hard because a lot of people, especially with content design, when people are hiring, it seems that all the job listings are senior and above. And it really puts a lot of people at an unfair advantage. People who have maybe been in this for 10 plus years versus people who are trying to break in. The barrier to entry feels really, really high right now. And I hate that because it really feels elitist, and I don't like elitism. And I'm like, no, stop that. UX purportedly advocates for inclusion and belonging and for all people. And yet it is incredibly difficult for people to do UX. It makes no sense to me. And so we deliberately went for the jobs I was hiring for. We went after people who were junior and mid-level. All my direct reports are mid-level or junior. And I love that. I've sought that specifically. We didn't need senior level people because we had me and we had another senior content designer on another little micro team. We needed people who were willing to learn, who are coachable, adaptable, and really cared about this work. And we needed to give them opportunity. And that's what it's all about. And here I am preaching again. So I'm going to stop. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you very much. That was really helpful.
You're welcome.
Your answer to Mindy's question reminded me to say to everybody that one of the things that Cheryl Curris is going to talk about tomorrow is how to read a job posting. And there's a whole part of it. She says, you can ignore it. And it's the part that says must have XX years of experience or XX degree. And her point, which, you know, come listen to it from her, she actually knows what she's talking about. But her point is, if you have an impressive portfolio and you interview and come off as an intelligent, caring, thoughtful person, those so-called requirements are going to get set aside. So she advises you, do not be intimidated by those things.
And if I can piggyback off of that, Larry, especially since you mentioned portfolio, like, honestly, I'm not too happy with mine at the moment. And
we have a program here. We could.
Well, there you go. Take my money.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a constant work in progress, because I think as many of us have probably sensed, is that the expectations, the qualifications are continually evolving. And so people are like, okay, so show this in your portfolio, but then you need to start showing this and you need to start showing that. And it's just constantly changing now. And I think, honestly, from my perspective, from my view, when I'm looking at portfolio, I do care about your thought process. One of the things I told my team recently as we started on this big ambitious web project is, so here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to document the choices that we've made. Feel free to start grabbing these things for your portfolio so you can create a case study, because everything you're doing right now is going to benefit you in the long run. I am not one of those managers who thinks, okay, you've started here with me, you're going to stay with me for the duration of your career. This is the company where you will spend the rest of your life and the rest of your career. No, that's ridiculous and nonsensical and not, it's uncommon. It's not going to happen. My goal is to help them get to the places where they want to be. Like, that's what I want to see from my team. I want them to grow here. I want them to do amazing work. Yes, I want us to have a great time doing it, but I'm not sitting around thinking like, yep, in 10 years, you and me. No. So let's talk about your portfolio. Let's talk about the things that you need to be leveraging today, and the things that you need to be keeping track of today, so that when you're making case studies, you have a really solid one, because that's what people are looking for. But to your point, Larry, also, when you land that interview and you're talking to a portfolio, even if it's not perfect or pristine or as great as you want it, if you can articulate your thought process and you can give people a peek inside how your brain works, it will make a difference. I interviewed back in January 2021, before I got a job at RV. I interviewed for a content design role at a pretty big company, and in the process, somehow the recruiters sent the wrong link to the person who was reviewing my portfolio. So this individual was reviewing things that had nothing to do with UX at all. Like, none of my app work, none of landing pages, no sign up screens or sign on screens, none of that. It was all things I had written while I was working at Movement Mortgage, and I managed the corporate blog. So I had a bunch of blog posts. Like, that's what the person was reviewing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, there's no way this is going to go well. It went very well, because those blog posts gave her insight into my head, because the way I wrote was very, in her words, empathetic. And I'm like, oh, you're okay with that? And she's like, yeah, I love this. Like, I can tell you're very people focused. I can tell that you think about your reader, you think about the user, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was like, okay, that went better than I thought. And during that, I was able to immediately like course correct and show her all the flows and the things I had to show her the correct work samples. But that just goes to show that it really depends on who you land in front of, honestly. Some people are probably going to be more like bigger sticklers than others. And they're going to be like, no, I want to see apps. I only want to see app work. I only want to see product work. I only want to see a flow. And others are going to be like, wow, you're really versatile. Like, we could use that versatility on our team. There's really no way to really gauge that beforehand. But if you get to that process and you realize that you found a person who probably will give you a little more grace and is willing to really just talk and look at you as a person and understand your thought process, you can do that. Like, you can use that moment and that time to your advantage, and you can convince this individual that I can do this. I can do this work. I am doing this work. It just happens to look a little different right now, but I'm more than able to adapt, and I'm more than able to do product work, and I'm more than able to do an app or a landing page or a website or whatever, because this is my repertoire of work and this is how good I am. So yeah, brag on yourself and talk yourself up during these interviews. That makes a difference. It really does.
Great. I'm glad we kind of went off that little sidetrack. By the way, I'm kind of doing the math in my head here. The questions that I have in the queue and the number of minutes remaining, we're going to try this because you're loquacious, as you pointed out.
I'm so sorry.
Question askers, 1 minute to ask the question. Jonathan, sorry to do this to you. 4 minutes to answer.
Just
do
4?
It? Just 4. Good luck.
Good luck.
Karen Johansson, show Jonathan what a nice, concise question looks like.
So, hey, Jonathan. So I come also from a journalism background, also moved from there into copywriting, and am currently still writing and editing, but also doing, returning to my original path from school, which is fine art photography. And I am doing the Google UX program. And just to kind of get an introduction to where I might want to go. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts for someone like myself who is kind of delved into several different interrelated but different areas of how to define where I best fit into the UX world.
That's a great question, Karen. I would say the first thing to start with is an examination of your passions. What gets you going? Like, what do you really care about when you're writing, when you're editing, when you're taking photos, when you're creating? What is that thing that really just motivates you and inspires you? Once you've identified that, I would say kind of take a lay of the land, take a look at the land of UX and kind of figure out like, okay, I care about portraying people with dignity. Okay. I'm just throwing that out there. How could I leverage that passion and that interest into a UX career? Does that mean that I become a researcher where I am collecting information from users, using my journalism background to interview people about the products and experiences that they're using? Am I gathering their pain points? Am I coming up with insights? Am I coming up with top line analysis? Am I delivering to a team and advocating for the user and just speaking for the user because I care about the dignity of our users? I care about what they're experiencing. I care about representation. I care about inclusion. Or do I really, really enjoy words and really love advocating for people with language and really love kind of being part of architecting solutions and building things from the ground up? Because then maybe I want to be more of a content designer where I am working with product designers and researchers to craft these elegant solutions and to help solve the problems that my UX researcher has identified. Maybe I want to be a UX designer. Maybe I want to create the products. Maybe I want to do a lot of the wireframing work. Maybe I want to create the flows because I like solving puzzles for people. I like figuring things out. I like deciphering like really complex issues. You know, I think whatever it is that really, again, gets you going and what really inspires you and whatever you find that really drives you, you probably can find it somewhere in UX. It's just a matter of what do I want to put my time towards? What do I want to invest in? And what do I really value? All of those disciplines touch each other and are interrelated, but they have their nuanced differences. So, you know, I wanted to stay with the content design track because I love to write. You know, I am not one of these content designers who gets offended when someone calls me a writer. I am a writer. I love that, but I'm also a writer that designs. You know, I'm a designer who writes, whatever you want to call it, however you want to say it, it's fine. I write. Words are my thing. I love words. I couldn't imagine not being part of words. And so I wanted to find a way to, again, use my love of words, my passion for words and for written language and people to do good things, to actually do good work, to make meaningful change, to do something that I cared about. And so that's kind of why I've stayed with content design and want to continue to stay, because I feel like I actually make a difference in my job day to day. Similar to why you may have become a journalist, similar to why I became a journalist. We like making differences.
Thank you. And you did it. You both did it.
That's 4 minutes.
Give yourself a hand. I think we have a couple more that are kind of career path, and then we have some kind of odds and ends that I do hope we can get into. Okay. One of them I think this is a pretty simple question. Is there a role for freelancers in the UX design process? And I hope, content design process. And I hope question askers, I hope you don't mind me paraphrasing on your behalf.
So, yeah, I mean, like I mentioned Katya before, she was a full-time freelancer for a year before she landed at RV and started with us. So I absolutely think that if you're interested in freelancing and working with clients and you want to, you don't want necessarily to work a 9 to 5 for a particular company and you want to kind of just build your own little empire and enterprise, go for it. Absolutely. I run a side business. It's not UX content specific. It's called John Writes. Very original, I know, but it's content writing. And so Yeah, it's all, I love a good side hustle. I respect Side Hustle Nation, anybody who's part of that. But yeah, I think freelance is a great opportunity to really get a lot of exposure and to just get a lot of experience, because you'll be doing a lot of different things. So unlike working for maybe one particular company or one particular brand or whatever the case, or product or whatever the case may be, you'll kind of get your hands on a little bit of everything, depending on what you actually pursue. So yeah, go for it. I think there are people who are realizing how much they need UX content folks involved in the process, whether that be a product designer or a researcher or a content designer. There are companies out there that are willing to pay money for it. So you should definitely take advantage of that, get that coin, and kind of build that expertise for yourself and build that name for yourself.
Excellent. Thank you. Hey, Evan, do you want to ask your question about in the absence of research?
I think I want to defer to other folks because I think that Jonathan touched a little bit on it in his answer to Mindy's question, just like kind of being user focused and like making sure that you're focused on the user needs. I think he said like a lot that really covered what I would have asked, and I want to give a little time to other folks to ask questions who might not otherwise get this chance. So yeah, I think he answered my question, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. We have a few questions here, Jonathan, about Figma. How do you like that? So Althea, why don't you pop in and ask yours, but I want to answer it. Recommended resources for learning beyond the basics. Schools like SVC can help you there. But anyway, Althea, ask your question.
Sure. I'm a former journalist, also a former marketer, and started to learn about content design last year. And in everything that I sort of read, it was like pertaining to Figma. Just be able to create a text box, put some text in there so you can, say what it is that you need to get changed. So fast forward this year, I was lucky enough to actually get a content design internship that I ended last week. And in it, I found that I spent a lot of time in Figma. And luckily, I knew enough to be dangerous. But there were times when I always felt like I needed to have a product designer because I always thought of them as like the expert, the Figma expert. But there were projects where they weren't on it. And I didn't realize that they were expecting me to know more Figma. And we were able to work things out. But in your experience, how much Figma does a content designer really need to know? And what are some resources where one can learn, recommended resources to learn beyond the basics? I feel like I know the basics, but I felt like I was sort of going into product design realm. And I would love to learn it. But I don't want to step on anybody's toes. But what would you recommend for taking it up a notch?
Right. Well, that's a really good question. And I think it's one I'm currently exploring and figuring out myself, honestly, because I would classify myself as also knowing enough to be dangerous. Like I can wireframe, I can insert photos, I can do all those kind of things that give my product designer a glimpse into like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Can we do this? And let's work together on it in real time. I think I need to learn a lot more myself. So I would say continue to go deeper, learn more about plugins. Like there are things like the Lorem Ipsum plugin, Unsplash. I need to get more into FigJam, which is great for whiteboarding. But I also, to your point, I do have product designers that I lean on a lot. Maybe I shouldn't lean on them as much to be the Figma experts. But I just don't think there's ever a shortage of I don't think there's a limit to how much you can learn, specifically in a design tool. I think Figma is just going to continue to be something that we focus a lot on and continue to work in, and it's just growing in prominence. And so there's going to be a lot more, I think, a lot more contextualizing, a lot more plugins, a lot more opportunity for us. So I think continue to deepen your learning and to go and to educate yourself as much as you can. I don't know so I have access to Udemy, which is e-learning the e-learning platform. And they have some pretty good Figma courses there. And so I've taken some of those, and I think those are pretty helpful. Some of them do get a little more technical than I thought I would need, and I haven't been able to utilize a lot of that. But I would say those are probably good resources as well to kind of just take a look at and see, like, hey, like there's this Figma course out there, and they're getting really sophisticated, complicated flows and all that kind of stuff. And I would say that probably is a good indicator of, okay, I'm going deeper now. Like I'm getting a little more in-depth in my knowledge when you can do really complicated flows and kind of just wireframe an entire product. I guess that would let you know, like, that's the hallmark. Like, I have arrived. I'm not there yet. You and I can work on that together and check in with each other to figure out how we're doing, because I am, like I said, definitely at the place where I'm like, okay, yeah, I have 5 screens. I was able to do 5 quick screens and wireframe it and hear the words. And hey, I thought this would be good. And can we use a little arrow here? And look, oh, this is an accordion. And that's where I am. But I cannot celebrate and laud the values of tools like Figma, even things like InVision enough. I think anything that helps us collaborate with our design partners more easily is a win, and something that we should definitely continue to utilize and just keep learning.
Hey, Jonathan, at the beginning of your answer, you threw out the names of about 3 plugins. Could you rewind and just tell a little bit more about what those are? Because I know Jesse wanted to know specifically about your favorite plugins for kind of automating the workflow a little bit.
Well, I guess Unsplash is kind of at the top of my list, because photos. Who doesn't like a good photo? And Unsplash, you can use those photos for free. It's stock photography, but it's beautiful. It's so beautiful, so much better than a lot of the other, like iStock and all that kind of stuff. FigJam isn't. I guess I don't know if that's not really a plugin. But I will say that is really useful, again, for whiteboarding and for brainstorming. And so I definitely support the use of FigJam. I need to use it more on my team. We used to use Miro a whole lot. If you're familiar with Miro, we are now transitioning away from that. And so definitely anything that will help you kind of just scrawl ideas out with your team, especially virtually. We're not able to go into an office as much as we may want to or accustomed to. So I would say those are really helpful. I guess the Lorem Ipsum plugin, I mean, that's really good for maybe a product designer, because they can kind of, again, wireframe things and kind of just input Lorem Ipsum text into a flow. A content designer can also use that if you're just like, okay, I have an idea for how I want things to look, and then I'll go back and do the content. Just make sure before your product design partner gets into that file or starts tinkering with anything that you've written what you need to write. You do not want your Lorem Ipsum showing up anywhere, because if there's one thing that I've learned, and this is no dig to my design partners, some of my designers are very attentive to detail and read everything and look at everything, and some do not look at anything. And so we just want to be able to, have each other's backs and make sure, and that's my job. I mean, I should be the one like, okay, do I see anything Latin here? And so yeah, those are just 2 or 3 really that I think are pretty cool. Again, I'm still learning about plugins, still figuring all that out too. But yeah.
Well, this is
Unsplash. Go for the visuals always.
I salute you on that one. Just used it about an hour ago. Related to this, Jesse was curious to know how you're presenting your work. Do you present it as a Figma file or in some other form? Or does it depend on who you're presenting it to?
So we have not presented anything to external partners in Figma yet. We have used InVision. So we are about to start presenting to them in Figma. And I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do that, because I know there is a lot of concern about giving so much access and watching things, like watching it happen in real time, someone just manipulate everything and potentially ruin it. InVision has been helpful because it's very controlled. It's basically we send over a completed design, the partner has looked at it, or we're on a meeting and we're walking through things. It's easy that if we're in a meeting, we can present in Figma because we can share a screen. But sometimes we need to go through a review process. So we have to send things off to the partner. And so if that's the case, we've used InVision. I think though, we are definitely going to get to the point where we're only using Figma, but we haven't exactly decided what that looks like exactly. Like, how are we going to share Figma? Are we going to give them all Figma logins so that they can get in and see everything? Are we going to, just try and make a PDF? I don't know. I don't know exactly how we're going to do that. But, I know there are controls we can definitely and permissions that we can set. So that's probably how it's going to be. But one of the things we've realized with external partners that's sometimes tricky is getting them onboarded onto new technology and software. That is, gosh, that's hard sometimes. And so there are some people who still fight against InVision, including their legal department. They don't want a single thing in InVision. So oftentimes what we have to do is import the words in Google Docs, and it's awful. And I hate doing that, but that's where we are currently. Like I mentioned before, there are some relational things that we're still trying to figure out. If anybody from Train is on this call, hey, I should have mentioned that way earlier. I'm just saying everything. Hello. Oh my.
I stopped doing yoga.
You said what?
Hi.
Oh, okay. Did someone say something about yoga? Did I hear something? Anyway, so we're still trying to figure all of that out. And like I said, smooth over those things and trying to figure out how we work together the best. And so, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
All right. Thank you.
Larry, do you mind if I literally have a 1-minute timer in my hand and I just want to add a little thing? I was asking because I've been presenting in Figma and I'm running into some issues. And so if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I will tell you what we've run into so far, because there is definitely some wonkiness that will take some planning. And I'm happy to at least tell you where I've landed. I'm just still trying to basically figure out how to handle the versioning that ends up being the biggest headache for us. So thank you. I think that was ended being 15 seconds, but I'll find you on LinkedIn. Thank you.
That would be super helpful. Thank you, Jesse. Yes, please.
We're all here to help each other. That's what it's all about. I think maybe a pretty neat place to end would be with Sammy's question about advocating for the role of content design in your organization. So Sammy, why don't you say it better than I just did?
Oh, you summed it up pretty great. Hey, I'm a program manager right now, and I work in internal IT, so corporate shared services. We have internal tools for our employees. And so the idea of a UX designer or content designer just doesn't exist in internal tools. So how would you kind of sell that role or roles to your leadership within an org that doesn't really understand the benefits of it?
Ooh, that's great. Let me think about this. I'm going to chew on this for a minute. So if there's a good way, and I'm sure ideally I'd have the way for you. If there's a good way to demonstrate what you're losing because you don't have these roles, if you can kind of create some kind of loss aversion or just create and show them and prove to them that we could be doing X, but we're doing Y instead because we don't have these roles. And we're not keeping up, and we're not being as competitive as we could be, and we're not being as intuitive as we could be. Competition may not be something that they're very concerned about, but maybe just focus on everything they're losing and how antiquated the way they could be, if it is antiquated at all, their processes are working currently. Maybe kind of highlight those and emphasize those things, and then find some literature that touts the value of UX and help them understand what UX actually is, and make it as easy for them to understand as possible. I think for many business folks, especially, UX in and of itself is new terrain. So they're starting to kind of just feel it out. They like the idea of it. They're like, okay, this makes sense. But then when you start getting into the more particular job roles and titles like content design, it gets massively confusing for them. I know this from firsthand experience, because even though I do work at Red Ventures, where yes, we have a lot of content designers, we are finding that our business leaders are not really up to speed. Not all of them are up to speed on what content design actually means. And so literally, even though I was off today, there was a conversation happening over Slack about this with a senior leader. And I will have to kind of get involved in that conversation tomorrow. But it's about resourcing with my team and using us for things that we're not supposed to be utilized for. And so I think education and constantly reiterating the points that you just made, honestly, are some of the most effective ways to actually make some inroads there. So again, kind of just help them understand what we're losing because we're not utilizing UX experts on any of our products. Our products are not intuitive. They are not relatable or personable. They're not useful, actionable, helpful. If any of those things are true, definitely focus on that. Then come with literature, data, research, anything touting the benefits of UX, and then continue to maybe do some kind of continual learning opportunity with them, whether that's a 101 with key leaders, whether that's a lunch and learn, a presentation to an entire team. I know that can be difficult because you have to actually stoke the interest in this thing for people to understand. But if they can understand that this is a big business opportunity that we're just allowing to kind of just go off the radar for us, and that we're just kind of sitting there with our hands tied and we're just watching everybody else do really good work, and that we could be on the level of a Shopify or whatever other company that they might be watching, that may help motivate them to attend these kind of lunch and learns and education sessions and one-on-ones. I'm not sure that really helps. That's hard. That's really hard.
No, it's helpful for sure. Thank you. I mean, ideally, I kind of spin this into like, oh, you need someone to do it. Like, I could do that for you. But yeah. No, that's absolutely helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you could come to them with like a resourcing solution, like, hey, we don't have to hire anybody right now to do this, you'll probably get more buy-in, because everybody's trying to pinch pennies all the time. If they can get away with doing something new without having to hire an entirely new team, they'll probably eat it up. And then you can validate the need for more headcount, because you're doing the work. It becomes too much for one person to do, and you're like, okay, we need to build out a whole team to do this, because there's no way. So yeah.
Hey, Sammy, have you seen this book? I have to hold it so it's not glaring. Cultivating Content Design by Beth Dunn at HubSpot. And it's not very big, but this book speaks exactly to that question. And it's how to kind of create a culture kind of on with no money, just whatever you can do on your own to try to build more understanding for what the content design value is and how the process works. So I think if you haven't seen that, I think that'll be helpful to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Look at us. We're on time. This has never happened. Hallelujah. Jonathan, thanks a million. This was so great. Just
Thank you.
Packed about 5 hours worth of great information in here, which was really fantastic. Thanks everybody for coming. If you can join us tomorrow, that'd be fantastic too. Again, you'll have to register so you can get the URL. But whether you can make it or not, we really appreciate your coming tonight. And giant round of applause, please, for Jonathan. Thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to be here, allowing me to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Really do appreciate it. Love the content design community, one of the friendliest in the world. So yeah, it was great being here. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
We just got flushed.